I'm just a little happy to be here, so pardon me. Good morning online. It is so good to be here and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. For anyone who has been living under a rock or in a cave for about the past year, you may not know that we've been around for 200 years, but indeed we have, and we are going strong through all the changes that 200 years would bring. But I want to welcome you this morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Kathleen Rudolph, and I joyfully serve this congregation as its consulting minister. And I welcome those of you online, whether you have visited us before in person or perhaps always online, or this may be your first time, and the same here in our fellowship hall. If you are visiting online for the first time, I encourage you to type in the chat box where you are from and let people greet you, because we are happy that you are here. I don't see anyone that I don't recognize, but in case there is someone here or someone comes in, we can encourage them to be sure to fill out a guest card on the table right near the entrance and exit, because we'd love to be able to reach out and let you know about all the wonderful things that are happening here. This is an amazing religious, spiritual community. Amazing in that we welcome you, whoever you are, wherever you are from, whatever it is that you do, wherever you might be on your journey in life, we welcome you. We yearn to learn from you, just as we would hope to share with you that you might learn from us. We welcome all, and you are an important part of our celebrations each and every time that we gather together. So welcome. We're glad you're here, both online and in person. This morning, we have a few announcements, and they're really good. So you're going to want to listen. You're not going to want to miss a single one. So you will see, if you have your order of service here or online, if you happen to print it out, you will see some announcements as well. First of all, we have some things happening today. A couple of really important things, and then one last one we will do at the end. This afternoon, well, let's start right after the service. This is a day you could be with this great community the entire day today. Who else offers something like that? You don't have to plan anything, just be here. Because immediately after, at 11:30, you are invited to attend a very interesting start of something called the Death Cafe. If you haven't heard of it, and it sounds intriguing, it sounds mysterious, it may sound a little scary, I want to encourage you right after the service to talk to Jeff Asher. Would you raise your hand and let's see? And Marcia Brooker, would you raise your hand and see? Those that are online, if you stay after, I'm sure that if for a breakout group after the service, which I encourage you to do, to make more connections, we'll be sure to get you that information as well. That's happening in the lower level here of the fellowship hall at 11:30. Now, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, that means you have not been reading your newsletter or your weekly email, but that's okay. If you haven't registered, you are still welcome. Go downstairs, check it out, see what this is all about. I am very excited and appreciative of the fact that this is something that we're looking to offer here at UUCD. So that's the first thing. Then maybe you want to go to Starbucks and grab a coffee or something, but you're going to want to come right back, because we have a concert this afternoon, a wonderful concert at 4:00. It's part of a series called Music at the Ridge. So you can also be entertained this afternoon. So come and listen to Sally Rogers and Howie Burnson. And those of you who have been around UU circles for a while, you might remember that hymn, Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us. So you could just go ahead with it. Well, that was written by Sally Rogers, and she will be right here this afternoon offering a concert that you're not going to want to miss. So I encourage you to make plans to do that. Those are a couple of things that are happening today. You're going to see other things in the order of service. And we have one other thing that I'm going to have Sierra Marie announce in just a moment. But I want to move us ahead just a bit for another exciting announcement. Has anyone here heard about something this community does called an auction? It is one of the biggest, it's the biggest fundraiser we do. It is one of the most enjoyable activities that we do as a community, and it's coming up. It is coming up. What is the date? Anybody know the date? Wow, you have been reading your emails. February 11th. Mark your calendar. You're going to want to see it and be a part of it. But right now, what I want you to do is think about how you can contribute to that auction, because that's what that team is looking for right now. They are looking for donations to the auction. You may have some, as Peter Horton would say, regionally famous food that you make. I have a family famous chili that I make, and I think that my husband Phil and I are going to be offering a chili dinner this year. So there may be something special you make. There may be a gift card that you just got that maybe you're not going to use it. You might have one that's been sitting around for a little while. Those are a wonderful contribution to the auction because those go in gift baskets. There may be a service that you do. Maybe someone from our knitting group would be willing to offer some free lessons for knitting and get someone involved in the knitting group. Perhaps you can offer rides to something. There are so many things that can be done, and the auction team is great at helping you figure that out. That's where we're at right now. We need to get some donations for this auction so that it can be a fabulous event. And I have to say, you're going to want to see Jerry and Peter Horton do their shtick. It's unlike any other shtick you've seen, and it is worth it. But if you are on that auction team, could you just raise your hand and let people see who you are and keep them up for a minute? And those of you online, I'm going to tell you, Val Cochran and David Leas and Peter and Lisa Horton and Diane Purvis and Nancy Cullen. If you know any of those names, talk with those people. See what it is that you can contribute to make this auction one of the best. And thank you for remembering the date. And I hope to see you there, and you can bid on my chili dinner. But we have one more thing for today before we move into our service. And I'm going to ask our Director of Religious Education, Sierra Marie, to share that with you.
Okay, so we are past now the 12th day of Christmas. It is time to take down our holiday tree. I am going to be in OWL orientation for high school during coffee hour, and we need to take it down during coffee hour. So I'm going to be asking for right now for 5 or 6 volunteers to help with that. So the first thing that we need help with is we need some people who will take ornaments and lights off the tree and box them up in a box that I have back over by the piano in the back corner here. 2 people who are willing to do that. Would you raise your hand? Come on now. Come on. It's not going to happen. Thank you. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. It's not going to happen by itself. Okay. And now we need 2 people who will take down the tree, wrap it up in a tarp, and take it outside to the wheelbarrow that Gary has set up outside. Who's going to do that? Raise your hand. Come on now. Oh, thank you. Thank you. I need one more person. One more person. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And then we need somebody to take the vacuum that's in the corner back there and make sure all of the needles get vacuumed up, both from in here as well as taking the tree out. Who's willing to vacuum? Oh, you did you say you would, or who's going to do that? I mean, if you talk, I just assume you're saying yes. Who can vacuum? Come on now. One person to vacuum. Oh, Val's going to volunteer twice. Come on. Are you leaving Val high and dry? Somebody please volunteer to vacuum. Val, don't vacuum. I will come back in this room. You can. Oh, thank you. Okay. Who said yes? Maxwell. Thank you. Thank you. I very much appreciate it. Hero that you are. You can leave the tree stand and the vacuum and the box of ornaments and lights in here, and I will come and put them away when I'm done with the owl orientation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah Marie. Now you have your whole day planned. You've got all your volunteer work in. So let's take a moment and greet one another. Say Happy New Year to each other. Wave to the camera behind you. It's good to be together this morning. I invite you to rise now in body or spirit as you are able, and let us lift our voices in song. On this January morning, we're going to sing number 1000. It's the first one in this soft covered hymnal, Morning Has Come.
Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journeys home.
I'd like to invite Bob Bollinger to come and light our chalice for us this morning. Bob is a longtime member of this congregation who serves on our caring team and on our nominating committee, and has been involved in this congregation offering his gifts for many years. And for that, Bob, we are grateful.
Bob said he would be grateful if this would light.
There we go. Thank you, Bob. And our service coordinator, Sally Mandler, will lead us in the chalice lighting words.
Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life.
It's so good to be together. Let's say our children's affirmation. The words are on the screen. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the earth and each other. There once was a mother who was very sad. She was sad because her child was so sick. She had bathed him and given him medicine. She did everything she knew to help her child get better. Finally, in desperation, she did one last thing. She had heard the Buddha teach many times. His stories and teachings were so wise. The Buddha was the wisest person she could imagine. This mother, like many other people, believed that the Buddha perhaps could do anything, even make sick people well. She told the Buddha how sick her child was and how she had tried everything she knew to help him. She said, "You are the wisest person on earth. If anyone can help my child, it is you." But the Buddha saw that the child was not sick. He had died. The Buddha knew that there was nothing he could do for the child, but he thought that perhaps there was something he could do for the woman. He told her that he could make a special medicine, but that to make this medicine, he would need the woman to find a rare ingredient. He would need her to bring him a mustard seed. But that wasn't all. This mustard seed had to come from a house in which no one had ever experienced pain or loss. He told her, "Go door to door and bring me a mustard seed from each house free of sadness, pain, loss, or death." So she went to each house in the town, and at each door she would say, "My child is dying, but the Buddha said he could help my child if I could find a seed from a home in which no one has ever been sad or known death, had pain, loneliness, or loss." Nancy, have you ever been sad?
Oh, yes.
So I suppose that you don't have a seed that would help the Buddha make his special medicine. So then she would go to the next home. She would say, "My child is dying, but the Buddha said he could help if I could find a seed from a home in which no one has ever been sad or known death, had pain, loneliness, or loss." Sally, have you ever been sad?
Yes.
So I suppose that you don't have a seed that would help the Buddha. And then she would go to the next home. She said, "My child is dying, but the Buddha said he could help my child if I could find a seed from a home in which no one has ever felt sad or known death, had pain, loneliness, or loss." Lisa, have you ever felt sad? So you too do not have a seed that would help the Buddha. When the mother had visited every house in the village, she returned to the Buddha. The Buddha asked the woman what she had learned. She explained that she had learned that there was no house in the entire village in which no one had not at some point been sad or experienced great loss or been in great pain. She said that she had learned that there was nothing the Buddha could do to help her child. She said she also learned that she wasn't alone. So ends the story. Let's sing together "This Little Light of Mine."
As we come to the time in our service where we share the milestones of our lives, I want to ask you to be sure that your phones are turned off, that those are on silent, that this indeed might be a time of reflection, that we would honor what is shared here without interruption. So let's take a moment to breathe together. Let's reflect on what has been shared here by those online, stepping into service. What a wonderful thing. Babies being born, birthdays being celebrated. So many wonderful things. Finding peace in being alone and out of the hustle and bustle. And yet, those who would be suffering, those where there is sadness, we hold those too. I invite you into a moment of silence to reflect on what has been shared and reflect perhaps on what you are holding in your heart today. Would you join me in singing our hymn of reflection, staying seated and in this spirit of reflection? It is the Buddhist hymn or chant. You will see it on the screen. It's in your hymnals, but unless you are looking to read music, I encourage you to look at the words on the screen so that you can focus. Is it I, you, and we, Jerry? I, then you, and then we, be filled with loving kindness.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be whole.
I share with you a reading this morning by Elizabeth Tarbox. Dhaka. Dhaka, they say. The Buddhists say all is DACA. It's hard to translate, they tell us. It means literally suffering. But the feeling of DACA is closer to impermanence. The fact of impermanence is central to the Buddhist path to nirvana, enlightenment. DACA. All is impermanence. Nothing lasts. I thought of that yesterday, watching leaves come down in a shower and the smell of the rotting ones going back into the earth, nourishing the roots of the mother tree. The crows crying as the leaves fall and their nests are exposed. DACA. All is impermanence. And life goes on. And people who were with us last year at this time have died. All pass on. All is DACA. Nothing lasts. The path to enlightenment is understanding, accepting impermanence to the point where we no longer struggle against it. That is the way of the Buddha. But here in the West, we search for that which is permanent, even as we live with the death of all things, all people. We search for a sure footing on the path strewn with fallen leaves. And we notice the buds of next year's growth, tight curled and waiting. We hold on to the things we can count on. Our community here. Our memories of those who died before us. Our love, our hope. And we hold on for the search for certainty in a world that is DACA.
This is the time in our service where we pass the plate, the weekly offering that we ask that you share generously. If you're like me, the past couple of weeks have been filled with asks, so many worthy causes and other things. And you're probably thinking, well, what can I contribute to the auction? Or what can I do? I can come to the concert because half the proceeds go to the musicians, the other half comes to our congregation. But we still need this weekly offering. So I hope you will give generously to sustain this community that we love. In order to do that, you can see what's on the screen, click on the QR code, or mail a check. Thank you.
I grew up with parables, maybe like some of you. But in the Southern Baptist churches of my youth, the parable teachings of Jesus were used regularly. And quite frankly, I just assumed that Christians, really Southern Baptists, had cornered the market on parables. Not even close. Parable is just a straightforward, short narrative, a simple narrative used to teach a lesson and illustrate a universal truth. As a form of teaching, it is most often associated with the teachings of Jesus. But parables can be found in many of the world's religions. We can find them in the Quran, we can find them in the Talmud, and sometimes the same parable will be found in different religious texts. The prodigal son is a parable found in both the Christian scriptures and in the Lotus Sutra teachings of Mahayana Buddhism. Many parables are religious in nature, but parables in literature can be an effective way to impart moral teaching because stories, and I've talked to you about this before, the importance of stories and sharing stories with each other. Stories can be recalled with clarity and interest, and they're often memorable. The theologian Karl Barth wrote what he called secular parables, and you're probably familiar with Aesop's Fables, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, The Emperor's New Clothes. But for this January parable series that I've decided to undertake, I've chosen two parables by the same name, but they have different messages. These are the teachings of the Buddha and Jesus. The parable of the mustard seed. Buddha and Jesus, both sages, prophets, teachers with hundreds of millions of followers, and I would say moral and spiritual revolutionaries. Who better to learn from? I am one who believes that the ethical teachings of both Jesus and Buddha can light our path as Unitarian Universalists. Now, what I've found in my experience, you might feel the same, is that if I'm not listening to the parable with a mind that is open to learning from a place of real simplicity, open to being in the moment and really seeing what is right in front of me, if I think, oh, I already know, I know the end to that, I know the answer to that, then I wind up, well, like this Buddhist monk. He was an expert on the Diamond Sutra. And his books were very valuable in his day. He carried the only copy in his part of the world on his back. And as the monk was traveling on a mountain road, he came upon an old woman who was selling tea and cakes. The hungry monk would have loved to refresh himself, but he had no money. So he told the old woman, I have upon my back a treasure beyond knowing, the Diamond Sutra. If you will give me some tea and cakes, I will tell you of this great treasure of knowledge. Now, the old woman knew something of the Diamond Sutra herself, so she proposed her own bargain. She said, oh, learned monk, if you will answer a simple question, it's a simple question, I will give you tea and cakes. So to this, the monk readily agreed. And the woman said, when you eat these cakes, are you eating with the mind of the past? Are you eating with the mind of the present? Or are you eating with the mind of the future? No answer occurred to the monk. So he took the pack from his back and he got out the text of the Diamond Sutra, hoping he could find the answer. And as he studied and he pondered, the day was growing later and later. And finally, the old woman packed up her things to go home for the day. Foolish monk indeed, she said. I told you it was a simple question. You eat the tea and cakes with your mouth. If I am not listening with that open mind, open to the simplicity of the lesson, I miss it entirely. Now, there are a number of versions of this Buddhist parable, the mustard seed, although they basically tell the same story. So, with minds open to learning from simplicity and open to being in the moment, I'm going to ask you to listen once again to this famous parable. It will sound slightly different from what you heard, and I hope you will hear new things. This comes from the foundational texts of Theravada Buddhism. Revolves around a woman named Kisa Gotami. Beautiful young woman. She had neither a father nor a mother to care for her. And in the city market one day, a very wealthy young man saw her and he immediately fell in love with her at first sight. She was in a booth selling flowers. He married her, and sometime after that, a baby was born. According to this version, a beautiful baby boy. Kisa Gotami was completely happy. The days slipped by very fast as she watched her little son grow and learn, and almost before she knew it, he could run and he could talk, and she loved him more than anyone else in all the world. She loved him when he was obedient. She loved him when he was stubborn. She loved him when he laughed and when he cried. But one day, the little boy became suddenly very sick. And even though Kisa and the boy's father did everything they knew to do, the little boy did not get well. And within just a few days, he died. Kisa could not believe that her little boy was really dead. No, it surely was just sickness that had put him to sleep. Some kind of medicine would surely wake him up. So she wrapped his body in a sheet and lifted him in her arms and carried him to her neighbor's door. Please, please, my friend, she begged, give me some medicine that will cure my child. But when the neighbor lifted the sheet, they saw the truth. They shook their head. There was no medicine. But she was not discouraged. She went from door to door to door to every house in the village, begging, please, please give me some medicine to cure my little boy. But each neighbor in turn looked, saw the truth, and shook their head. Finally, she met a man on the street who said, I cannot give you medicine for your child, but I know a man who can help you. Go to Buddha. He can always help people. And so Kisa Gotami hurried to the home of Buddha, and she stood before Buddha and said, Good Buddha, I am told you are always able to help people in trouble. Please, please, I beg of you, give me some medicine that will cure my child. And Buddha looked tenderly at this anxious mother. He knew the child was dead. He knew he could not bring the dead back to life again. But he did know he could help this mother. He could help her to feel peaceful and comforted. My good woman, you must help me find the medicine. Go and bring me a handful of mustard seeds. Surely I can easily find a handful of mustard seeds, because this was a spice that was in every house in the neighborhood in abundance. But remember, Buddha said, the mustard seed must come from a house where no one has ever died, or it will be of no use. No problem. She believed she could certainly find mustard seed in some house where no one had ever died. And Kisa thanked the Buddha and went out to find that handful of mustard seed. She went first to her next door neighbor. Do you have a handful of mustard seed? Please, Buddha says it will cure my child. Oh, certainly. Certainly I have mustard seed. I will gladly give you a handful and more. Thank you, but before I take it, I have to ask you a question. Has anyone ever died here? Yeah, a father, a grandmother, or anyone? Oh, Kisa, have you so quickly forgotten? Our dear grandfather died scarcely more than 2 months ago. Then your mustard seed cannot cure my child. But she was hopeful. Kisa went to another house, and she went door to door once again. Every house in the village asking for a handful of mustard seed, and everyone said, oh, yes, gladly, until she asked the question, has anyone ever died here? Yes, our oldest son died here 10 years ago, but we still miss him. Both our grandparents died here. My wife died here many years ago, and at every door it was the same. Someone said, Kisa, how can you expect to find a house where no one has died? Don't you know? The living are few, but the dead are many. Tired? Discouraged? Kisa Gotami went outside the village and she sat down alone under a rock under a banyan tree. She knew now that even Buddha had no medicine for her child. Nothing was going to bring life back again. But as she sat quietly on that rock, she slowly began to feel a bit of peace, because she realized she wasn't alone. She was not all alone. She wasn't deserted. The really real little boy she loved was gone. That was true. She didn't know where he had gone or why he had gone, but she knew now that he had died, just as thousands of other persons had died before, just as her own body would sometime die, just as everybody in all the world must sometime die. And Kisa Gotami felt all people were together in this experience. No one was ever all alone. She was beginning to understand why Buddha had sent her to get a handful of mustard seed, but she wanted him to tell her. So she went back to his home and he greeted her again. Oh, good woman, have you brought me the mustard seed? No, Buddha, there is no house in all the village where someone has not at some time died. And the Buddha said, yes, our lives in this world are all short, whether we live for 1 year or 100 years. Everyone who is born must sometime die. Yes, everyone. There are no exceptions. We all have our times of happiness and also our times of pain and sorrow. Do not struggle. Be at peace. Accept your life as a gift and take the days as they come, one by one. Fill them as full of kindness as you can. Now that she knew how much it hurt to be lonely, to suffer loss, she began to learn how to comfort others who were sad. And with this new understanding, her grief was calmed. And Kisa entered the first stage of enlightenment from her experience. And as some of the versions go, she actually became a disciple of Buddha's. Did you hear anything different or new or expanded in that telling? Maybe. Did you hear it? The simplicity. This story tells how a bereaved mother's despair is transformed by an encounter with Buddha. But one of the things I like most about this story is that instead of simply telling her the truth, the Buddha allowed her to discover it herself. And that process of discovery was in some way curative. Buddha didn't wave a magic wand. He didn't go into some long philosophical discourse on the ontological nature of the universe, because what good would that have done? She had to do the work herself. And this is a place where I see a connection to Unitarian Universalism. I see this connecting with the fourth principle that we hold: to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We have to do the work. It also connects with our third principle, where we affirm and promote encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. See, this is something unique about Unitarian Universalism, I feel. We will not hand you pat answers. You cannot come through these doors and say, I need the answers to this and this. Show me the text and where are the answers? We are here to help you on your journey. We are here to encourage you in your spiritual growth. We are walking beside you, learning for ourselves, searching for what is true, searching for meaning. It is the biggest challenge, and it is the biggest gift that I have found in Unitarian Universalism. The story teaches the inevitability of death, and that's a central part of the Buddhist belief in impermanence, that dukkha. Because the Buddha taught everything is impermanent. Nothing stays the same. We've been around 200 years. We are nothing like the congregation of 200 years ago. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same because everything is part of an endless causal chain. And this impermanence is the main reason for that difficult aspect of our experience, suffering. Dukkha. According to Buddhist teachings, the suffering of existence can be allayed in part by accepting the impermanence. Accepting that impermanence that characterizes our lives. In other words, it's not the constant change that's the problem. Oh, things are changing. Oh, it's not like it used to be. It's not the change that's the problem. It's our desire to keep things the same. That's the problem. It's our desire to hang on to the people and the pleasures around us right now. My colleague, Mark Ward, Randy may know him as well. Mark was graduating from seminary the year that I arrived in Chicago. He went on to serve the Unitarian Universalist congregation in Asheville, North Carolina. He served there for 17 years. And Mark died unexpectedly about 6 months ago at the age of 68. I was thinking about Mark as I was putting this message together because several years ago I read a sermon that he delivered on grief. And Mark said, we are the ones who grieve. We the living, that is. It's not something we like to dwell on. But most of us learn early that bound up with the joy we find in the people we love is accepting the fact that we will lose them. And they will lose us. It's part of the ebb and flow of existence. And yet we can be forgiven our reluctance to own up to it, to look in the eyes of those dearest to us and know that the time we have with each other is brief. And still, it is given to us to make peace, to find meaning, even in the losses that we find the hardest to bear. Grief is odd. It's odd in the way that it is at once so intensely personal and yet so universal. So part of living with our sadness is accepting our grief and opening our eyes to its universality. It doesn't lessen our sadness to do that, but it can provide a way for our compassion to grow, to help us see that not only is grief a universal experience, but we too may be the comforters. Our experience can open our hearts to others. That's what it means to be in UU community. That's what it means to be a part of UUCD. That's what all this means. Sharing our stories of experience with each other, allowing ourselves to be comforted and supported by others, and then opening our own hearts so that we may offer comfort. You know, it broke Kisa's heart to hear of all the pain and grief of her neighbors, but it also comforted her. She knew, she understood what they were experiencing, and she too was in the midst of her own grief, and yet having it reflected back proved to be a balm. There was a leader in the Unitarian Universalist Buddhist Fellowship that has written that Buddha's point with the mustard seed was to show this grieving mother that her natural human emotions of grief and loss and the natural transient nature of the world are not in sync. Attachment, it's our natural emotion of wanting an ever-changing world to stay the same, just stay the same. It's only with acceptance of the world as changing, which takes time, that we gain acceptance and therefore the end of suffering. As the Buddha says, everything in the world is as fleeting as a bubble rising up from a babbling brook. We don't often talk about grief, and we rarely talk about death. But the search for truth and meaning, the spiritual growth that we have promised to encourage each other to do, that includes exploring existential issues, life and death. It's one of the reasons that I am so grateful that Jeff Asher and Marcia Brooker are facilitating a death cafe here at UUCD. We are blessed to have members who see the value in this kind of exploration, and they have the courage to come before you and say, let's explore together. In addition to the parable teaching about the universality of death and grief, there's another lesson about change. Living in an ever-changing universe, there's a lack of certainty about everything. Remember, there are no pat answers. We don't have the book that we can hand to you. There is an uncertainty. And yet the thing that we want most is some structure, something we can hold on to. And this community can do that. We can be the structure that you can hold on to. But such communities go through transitions too. The liminal phase of not quite being the religious community of the past and not yet being the religious community of the future is unsettling. It's like the mother who lost her child. It's hard sometimes to let go of that idea of what our community was like back in the good old days, back at the barn. When we knew everyone, we knew every face, we knew everyone at coffee hour, we knew everyone at the special event, when there were loads of children every Sunday morning going off to their classes. And yet we may not be big enough to have all of the space and the people power that we dream of. Sometimes one phase of growth has died, and yet the new one has yet to be born. That liminal space. The lessons I hope we learn from the Buddhist parable of the mustard seed. Death is a universal experience. We would do well to talk about it. Impermanence is a reality in life. We would do well to accept it. And community, this community, is central to knowing we are not alone. Reverend David Eaton, longtime and first African-American senior minister at All Souls in Washington, D.C., wrote these words: "A common destiny, all living substance, all substance of energy, being, and purpose are united. We share the same destiny. All people, those we love and those we know not of, are united. We share the same destiny. Birth to death. We share this unity with the sun, the earth, our brothers, our sisters, strangers, flowers of the field, snowflakes, volcanoes, and moonbeams. Birth, life, death. Unknown, known, unknown. Our destiny from unknown to unknown. May we have the faith to accept this mystery. May we have the faith, the trust to build upon its everlasting truth. And may it be so." Sally, would you come and extinguish the chalices together? We share in those extinguishing words.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again.
Let us rise in body or spirit one last time in this service as we sing together our hymn of celebration. If you have the hard-covered hymnal, it's number 354. We laugh, we cry. And while this is a long song, I know that, I'm well aware, it has many verses. I could not see eliminating any of them because I find them all to be very powerful. But the point is, you don't sing it like a dirge. We will sing it upbeat. Jerry will lead us. We laugh, we cry.
We laugh, we cry, we live, we die. We dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We feel to feel the freedom just to pass the time. But most of all, we need strength to live our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we child is born among us, and we feel a special love. We see time's endless journey as we watch the baby grow. We thrill to hear it create our minds, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found the time to be together. And with the grace of age, we share the wonder of youth, and we believe that growing is an answer. Our lives are full of wonder, and our time is very brief. The death of one among us fills us with the pain and grief. But as we live, so shall we die. When our lives are done, the memories we share with friends, they will linger on and on. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a place to be together. We have the right to grow. We have the gift to believe that living is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we welcome you here to make sense of what we find. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a joy being together. And in our search for peace, we will finally see, even to question truth is an answer.
None of us are ever really spared, neither the just nor the unjust. For try as we might, we are all still subject to the challenges of pain, death, and separation, to the inherent impermanence of our material existence. And yet, the fact that no one is spared suggests we are never truly alone. So may the fact of our shared human condition foster empathy, compassion, and mutual loving support. May the stories of all those who have gone before us, ordinary flesh and blood people just like us, remind us of the deep reserves of courage and strength that lie within each and every one of us. And may the transient and ephemeral nature of life compel us to savor every moment, today and in all the days to come. Shalom. Salam. Amen. Blessed be to each and all. Namaste.